two, one.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Objective. And if you're joining us for the first time, I am he who is now known as COVID positive. That's right. If you doubt that COVID exists, I can only offer you that this is the most painful of hoaxes I've ever unwillingly taken a part of. The chest pain, the throat pain, the dire hopelessness and pessimism, looking out into the world from the point of view of a man with a dysfunctioning body. Does that sound like a fun hoax to you? Doesn't sound like fun to me. After the show today, I will be removing a frozen turkey from my freezer, placing it in my oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit, and setting the timer for 4 hours in preparation of what may be my last turkey dinner ever. Because there's only a 99.8% survival rate for my particular age and health group. But anyway, let's talk about what it is that we're here to talk about today. And please send your prayers, super chat donations, as well as consider becoming an ARC UK member to get exclusive content and help us grow this thing. Let us talk about a man who goes by the name of Dave Rubin. Now, this is a guy who we've been tracking for a while. A lot of this audience are students of objectivism, so you're familiar with Dave's relationship with a lot of objectivists. He's never lied. He's never, cynical people accuse him of grifting. They say, oh, Dave Rubin, he's doing it all for money. I've always taken him at his word. In my most cynical of moments, I've never accused anyone of doing something just for money. I've never sunken that low in cynicism. So I think he's always kept it real. He's always said objectivism seems interesting, but it takes a certain radical drive. You need to really, really be hungry for some conclusive answers, I think, to even be open to having your mind changed in such a radical way. And I was invited on his show in late 2017, and I told him, there's nothing new to see here. Speaking of the anti-social justice movement, the classical liberals, as they were called, the intellectual dark web, as they would soon be called, there's nothing really new to see here. We've seen this cycle. It's happened before, and only the names have changed, And throughout the history of philosophy, what we see over and over and over again is people pointing to the problems of the world and saying, look what selfishness has brought us. Look what, reason, the attempt to be rational, which is the attempt to be selfish, because reason is a selfish pursuit. As much as people try to turn it into a, quote, scientific group endeavor, at the end of the day, only an individual can look at the world. Only an individual can judge. And we can only deal with each other by using reality as our frame of reference. So through history, people have said, oh, look at all these problems that selfishness, that people thinking they're rational have brought us. So we need a morality that is the opposite of rational. We need a morality that is based on faith. We need collectivism in some form, or God's subjective whim as our code of morality. Because selfishness, because reason, that's not going to work. And when I told Dave Rubin, I said, Dave, when you look at all of this, and Ayn Rand is offering to break this cycle. She is saying we can have the moral and the practical be one and the same. And that can break this cycle. And you might say, but I am just one man. What could I possibly do? Well, what you can do, Dave, is take my hand, and together we can find Atlantis. But what do the Dave Rubins of the world, and really what do most people of the world say? 99.8% of the world, really the same percentage of people as I am likely to die of COVID right now. They all say, oh, people can't be perfectly rational. What do you mean? Look at all these idiots out there. Look at them acting so reckless and short-sighted. Look at them acting like the moral and the practical are opposites. Look at them acting like exactly what we've told them. Look at them following exactly what we've advised them when they doubt their own certainty, exactly the way we've educated them to doubt their own certainty. Look at them doing exactly what we advised and following exactly what we've laid out for them. Don't you see? So if there is going to be a positive change in the world, it's going to start with philosophy, and it's going to start with you and me. So I tried taking Dave Rubin's hand, but it wasn't his time. But maybe that time will come for him. You never know. All we can do is inspire, and all we can do is lead. Remember that. But here to take my hand today is a man who's been on vacation. I hope he's had fun on his time off while I've been sitting here with COVID-19 in my body. A man whose name I have missed mispronouncing and or pronouncing, depending on who you ask. A guy who no doubt has gravely missed my 75-minute opening monologues. Please welcome Greece's very own Nikos Sotirakopoulos.
Thank you very much, Rucka. And I really wish you the best. By the way, it's good that you lead a good lifestyle. You were supplementing, so hopefully this is going to be soon away. So let's make one thing clear. Why is this topic important? It's not important because Dave Rubin said something. It's important because if you connect the dots, you will notice that quite often conservatives or people who get attracted to conservatism basically pass the same message. And this message is, logic and reason is a luxury. It's good when we write books. It's good when we debate leftists, but it's a luxury. It's like this beautiful suit that you wear on a party, and then you put it back on the closet. But when we really have to go to war, when we really have to go in the trenches, then we leave logic outside of the window. And this is, for me, the big mistake, that logic and reason is not a luxury. It is our battle gear. It is actually our main and only weapon. It is a lethal ideological weapon. So it's a shame when conservatives throw it away. So let's go through the threads of Dave, and let's try to comment on it and try to spot what are the issues there and what are the things that he's missing. So, said Dave on some days ago, threads. I've come to the conclusion that the collapse we're in now is the inevitable end of what purely secular liberalism looks like. A sad reality as someone who wrote a book defending liberalism. The tolerance baked into liberalism is what let wokeism into the system. So a lot to unpack here. So looks like we've been living in this secular liberal universe. First bell ringing, secularism is to blame. Therefore, we already see what comes as a solution. You guessed it, it's going to be religion. So, and then he also throws tolerance. So we've been living in a secular, liberal, tolerant universe. For me, all these three things require some form of definition, which does not come. And this is what opened the door to wokeism. And let me read the second tweet because it's related, and then we'll make the first stop for your comment. The soft underbelly of that tolerance and a belief that logic and reason can solve all are the perfect breeding ground for bad ideas like wokeism to pop up and breed. And secular liberals, without a bedrock truth other than their own minds, have no defense against this. Now, we could do one episode for each one of these tweets, but let's start with the first tweet. So, what is tolerance and secular liberalism, and where did this come from as being the dominant narrative that opened the gate for wokeism?
Well, I think he's sort of joining the left in a sense, because the leftists, the postmodernists, the wokeists, I guess we'll call them, the social justice warriors, they see themselves as the logical continuation of the abolitionists, of the individualists that were, that established a country with inalienable rights. They see themselves as the next era of civil rights. They see themselves as the next feminists, as the next anti-Nazi, whatever, thinkers, activists. They see themselves as the champions of liberty, in a sense. And to them, liberty means not being offended, not being misgendered, getting to have your gender preference, self-image respected, and all of these things. And, and equity, so to speak, money probably divided more fairly, as they'll get to later. Right now, they're more focused on the personal gender stuff. But I mean, this is why thinking in essentials, definitions in essentials are so important. So conceptualizing in essentials, really. So if you see the main feature of the modern world is just, well, tolerance, just in a vacuum, tolerance. Now, to remind you, Leonard Peikoff parted ways with, I think his name is David Kelly, over Kelly wanting to add tolerance as an objectivist virtue. And Peikoff said, I think, first of all, don't call that objectivism, because Rand is not here to agree with you or disagree. But also probably tolerance in of itself is not a virtue. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I think Peikoff would agree with that. So tolerance in and of itself means nothing. I mean, it's like extremism, right? You can be extremely moral, which is a good thing, or you can be an extremist for, an extremist against, extremist germaphobe, let's say, and you're scrubbing down everything every second. And when a guest walks in, you start scrubbing them down and you won't let them near you. And even that's more of a coherent worldview than like other types of extremism. So if you're a communist, then please don't be an extremist. Please reach for the center, and we can talk about this. But so yeah, tolerance in of itself, it doesn't mean anything, and being tolerant of anything means, yes, you will be tolerant of evil as well as of the good, and you won't judge any of it. So for him to choose tolerance as like the defining characteristic of the modern world, which gave us wokeism, I think he's thinking in non-essentials, and he's pushing away the abolition movement. He's pushing away civil rights. He's pushing away, women voting and having a job and gay marriage, obviously, like all of these things he's pushing away because they come with tolerance. So it's an odd hill for him to fight on or die on, right?
Or what he's probably saying is that we've been tolerant in terms of we didn't put up a barrier. We didn't put a defense barrier. The question now, the big question is, what are the tools to bring this defense barrier? Because in some way he's right. The gates were open. The intellectual gates were completely open. So now let's try and see what would be the defense barrier that Dave would put up. So for me, the huge red flag is in the second tweet. And he says, secular liberals, without a bedrock truth other than their own minds, have no defense against it. Listen to it again, people. So this idea is that if your only claim against the opponents is your own mind, then you're defenseless. And our friend our friend Don Watkins actually did a brilliant quote that says, the woke mobs are the result of resentful hordes who surrender their minds. Your solution, Dave, is to surrender yours. So we see once again what we've also seen for people like Jordan Peterson on a different level. Peterson says you have to live for something beyond yourself. Now, there's a good reading of it, which is you need to have ideals, but also there's a reading that says that your life is not enough. Dave Rubin takes this and puts it in the sphere of epistemology, and he says you have to be guided to the world by something else rather than your mind. And the question then is, what is this other thing that can guide you beyond your mind? And the second question is, does this mean that the reason we've been here is because everyone says the only thing that can guide you is your mind, and this gave rise to wokeism? Because what I see giving rise to wokeism is the exact opposite. It's the worldview of tribalism, which tells you, put on your epistemological glasses that tell you that the world does not make sense through your minds. If you even have a mind, because who believes in free will and this parochial stuff, and try to understand the world based on the group, which is why we hear time and again people saying, as a woman, I believe X. As a man, I believe X. As part of this group, I believe X. So this is the epistemological universe we find ourselves in. And the colossal mistake that Dave Rubin is making is to believe that the problem here is that people are way too much, they have too much faith, to use his language, on reason, whereas it's the exact opposite. So here's a question, Dave, or our conservative friends. What should we base our judgments and our life view, if not our minds? The mind of you, the mind of your neighbor, the mind of the majority of your neighbors, the mind maybe of your ancestors, the mind of what that person who came down from the mountain and gave a script to your ancestors. So I'm very curious to hear what is the alternative rather than your mind for being the bedrock based on you have a defense against bad ideas.
Well, I think Ben Shapiro would say
Those last two were the correct answer. Your ancestors, as well as that silly guy who came down from the mountain with those tablets that have led our culture flourish, led it to prosperity and amazing, unprecedented freedom and accomplishments for the last 2,000 years or 3,000 years out of the 5,000 years that the world has existed. And I apologize, I can't speak as fast as Shapiro. He is a very, very smart man. But I'm not smart enough to believe all of that stuff. My senses are too sharp. I'm looking at the world around me and I'm asking, what can I get out of this world? And I know that belief in my ancestors and Moses is not going to get me what it is that I value out of life. Now, as far as saying that, left to your own devices and sort of putting all of your faith in your own mind, it will lead to chaos. I will say this as sort of an olive branch to Rubin and others. Before Ayn Rand, this was an understandable thing to say in a sense. Philosophers said things like this. Now, I think people like Ayn Rand could look at some of them and say, I recognize that this philosopher over here is smart enough to understand what he's doing here. Like David Hume, let's say, could have solved these problems of epistemology that he didn't. Just for example, I don't know if Rand felt that way about Hume. I know she saw Immanuel Kant as deceitful. So before Ayn Rand, a lot of philosophers said things like this. They drew this dichotomy between being rational and kind of being more rational. Like if you rely on your own mind, you won't be able to look at the big picture because your perspective is so biased and selfish and short-sighted. But the truth is, part of being scientific means looking at the big picture. It means using the data and thinking long-term and, again, looking at the world and asking, what can I get out of this? I want to be selfish in the best sense of the word. So someone like Dave Rubin, it would take a lot of effort for him to really, really investigate what Ayn Rand is offering in this. And as Rubin sees the world burning outside, he's basically shrugging, I think, and saying, look, don't ask me to go full objectivist. I gave objectivism a hearing. It's got some great ideas. I hope, conservatives say, I hope Ayn Rand has more of an influence as far as capitalism and entrepreneurship and, trying to be rational and all that. But at the end of the day, we do need religion, something like religion to tie us together. And I think Rubin and Shapiro and others would say that the founding fathers of America, they were at least deists because they were, but maybe they would say they were even a little more religious than that. And what is true is that people like John Locke and Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, they had some place for God in their philosophy. So if you remove God from that, that's when we see, crazy subjectivism, wokeism, everything's up to your whim and tolerance is running amok. So that's what I think they might answer.
So let's hear it from the original source. So Dave says, our founders understood this, which is why the Constitution didn't grant us rights, it protected them. Parenthesis, correct. He goes on. Rights are not given, not man-given. Rights are God-given, not man-given. Logic needs something eternal beneath it as a foundation. So here's where Dave Rubin says that rights actually come from God, and the only thing that the government can do is to recognize them. So he fully embraces the conservative claim. Now you mentioned Ben Shapiro. So here's a quote, and we didn't rehearse that, but I had it in my notes. So Shapiro said in the past, quote, if you get rid of Judeo-Christian morality, you end up with hedonism. You end up with people trying to reason their way to moral purpose. And that goes some really dark places, because you can reason your way to a world where the individual no longer matters. After all, if you have to break a few eggs to make an omelette, you just go ahead and do so. This is how you end up with gulags. Here's what I find, end quote, here's what I find fascinating. These people are supposedly the opposite pole to the New Left and the neo-Marxist and the cultural Marx and the Frankfurt School. What did the Frankfurt School say? The Frankfurt School said the tragedy is that we've paid too much homage to reason and progress and the Enlightenment. And where did it lead us? To the Holocaust. Conservatives say we've paid too much homage to reason, progress, and Enlightenment. Where did it lead us? To gulags. So you people might want to start asking questions when you have basically the same reading of history with the postmodernist neo-Marxist, as you call them. And let me finish with Ayn Rand's reply to that from Conservatism and Obituary. It's such a good quote that I can't paraphrase it, I'll just read it. So it says, the conservatives claim that their case rests on faith. This means that there are no rational arguments to support the American system, no rational justification for freedom, justice, property, individual rights, that these rest on a mystic revelation and can be accepted only on faith, that in reason and logic, the enemy is right, but men must hold faith as superior to reason. So this is basically saying, you woke mobs, you can keep your reason, we can have our faith. So this is basically, you see the enemy attacking, and what you do is you take out your weapons, you throw them away, and you start running God knows where, and you start preparing to fight with God knows what. I have no idea what conservatives are doing. I know what they're doing. I have no idea how they envision this battle going. And I think this is quite sad, but also it's widespread in conservatives. So it's not Dave Rubin, which I agree with you, has been, no question, a power for good in terms of good things happening, people getting intellectually curious. But this is the end of the road, unfortunately, if you don't take, as you said, philosophy a bit more seriously, going to the fundamentals, not taking it from the middle of the road, going to the beginning of the road. That's all I have.
And like I mentioned in my opening monologue, I think I said, this has been going on for ages. This has been going on maybe from the start, from the day one of philosophy, perhaps, or so. I mean, people, they keep on trying to pin reason on the other side, or selfishness on the other side. And keep in mind, reason and selfishness go together. Like, the more philosophers come to respect reason in epistemology, the more you see philosophers respect reason, the more you see selfishness get closer to the state of virtue, to being labeled as a virtuous thing. And you see people like Benjamin Franklin in perhaps the climax of the Enlightenment actually trying to devise an ethics that is very egoistic, but a little bit charitable, but still mostly, I guess you would say, eudaemonist, kind of looking for Aristotle's view of flourishing. The more reason is respected, the more selfishness comes close to being accepted as a virtue. And then the more altruism, or the more reason is pushed away and doubt, skepticism, mysticism takes its place, the more you see sacrifice is being demanded of you. So the two go together. So the battle is two-fourth, isn't it? It's both in ethics and it's in epistemology, and they go together and they feed into one another. And that's the battle, bro. And, the people out there, who are like surprised and they're saying, oh, I thought Rubin was so close to being objectivist. You people, stay away from Vegas, stay away from used car lots. I'm worried about you people who used to look at Rubin and thought, oh, he's so close to one of us. Oh, we're planting seeds in him and the others. Good God. I mean, I think the objectivists who interacted directly with Rubin, I think probably had the right idea, which is Rubin is a good interviewer and he has an audience, so he's worth engaging with. And I think don't be resentful of him now, I would say. Think of it like we got something out of him, and maybe we'll get more. Maybe we'll cross paths again soon at some point. But guys, if you actually thought, oh, Rubin was this close
to becoming objectivist, and Jordan Peterson came in at the 11th hour and swooped Rubin away from us. That's a very dramatic way to look at it. If I appreciate that as a dramatic, theatric artist, but I mean, in reality, folks, come on. Rubin was not. He was always a temporary friend. He was always a temporary, ally, if you want to put it that way. And generally, the world today.
One thing, Rucka, very important. We're not. What we're doing here is not like excommunications or something. We just point out how there is a trend among conservative thinkers, which almost predictably every time leads to predictable results.
Yeah, it's predictable if you factoring in free will, that anyone could, actually engage with an open mind and entertain Ayn Rand's ideas. But we know kind of it's a numbers game. It's very rare for someone to do that, to be that hungry for fresh new ideas. And it's rare for a 40-year-old, person with a relationship with Peterson, with Turning Point USA, with who met Donald Trump. It's very rare to see somebody in that stage of life suddenly question everything and really get inspired by objectivism. But it is possible. But I mean, and also keep in mind, the world today has nothing to do with what it was in 2016, 2017. Like, there was this vibrant movement of like anti-social justice people. They were as kind of ranged from like little YouTube channels all the way up to like big influential podcasters and stuff like that. People saying this social justice movement is crazy. We need to defend offensive comedy. We need to defend free speech, all these things. The world today has nothing to do with that. What's left of that? We have a bunch of them turned back to the left. They're all about the BLM riots, burning down the malls and police stations. And on the other side, you have people, I think, who have gotten very cozy with Trump. They're very cozy with voter fraud allegations and stuff like that. So, I mean, really, what's left of that movement? A ghost is all that's left. A memory, some echoes from the past is all that's left. We have a comment. Do you want to read that, or should I read that?
I'm from phone, so I can't access it.
Okay. Razi, he notified us a non-super chat comment. So in my opinion, it is lower than dirt on the ground. I'm joking, of course. There's more to life than money. Jeremy in the chat room says, Rucka's interview with Rubin was my introduction to objectivism. And my only response to that is, don't F this up. Please don't embarrass me. I don't want to see you become a Stefan Molyneux Trump supporter in a year from now. Thank you.
I can't see the causal link between the first part of your sentence and the second. So, but anyway.
I mean, people, they learn of Ayn Rand, but they still want a little bit of the Michigas.
Okay.
So they end up all over the place.
So let's end up on a positive note. So we mentioned Don Watkins. Now, unless I'm doing a horrible mistake, tomorrow, Wednesday, on the...
No.
Oh, he's not on. Okay. Forget what I said.
Because we're excommunicating him. That's right. Breaking news. Don is not invited. But next week, we're lifting that excommunication. He will be scheduled next week.
Okay.
So
tomorrow then, maybe not Don, but definitely James Valiant, unless I'm making a second big mistake. And I also think myself, we are talking about, let me flex about the beautiful Greek translation, the virtue of selflessness, and if I'm not wrong, about the objectivist ethics. So one of the most difficult to penetrate essays, one of the essays that most of us have read many times, but tomorrow we go through it with James, and I'm sure there was someone else, but anyway, James, and who knows who else. If not anyone else, I might be on that panel. Next week, we're going to have Don. So what's the message here? The message is ARC UK is doing good things with good people, trying to offer value on various different levels. So soon you're going to hear about new projects for members, but there's always a lot of content. So hopefully you're going to keep supporting it, watch, share, appreciate, make it part of your routine if it adds value to your life. Okay, these were the final words. Rucka, let's say goodbye to the people and let's go.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for all the well wishes. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for everybody hoping I get well soon. I am getting better, I feel. And, you know, remember, we got a lot of students of objectivism who watch this. You know, I'm speaking as an equal. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a leader of the intellect. I'm a fellow traveler. So take this as such. Be selfish, you know, study objectivism for you. It's fun. It is fun occasionally to engage with the outside world and to challenge Rubin and Shapiro and all these guys and to be polemic. It is a necessary element, but it is far from the essential feature. I think at the end of the day, be selfish and study for you because you want some stuff out of life that philosophy can help you get. And on that note, good to have you, Nikos Sotirakopoulos. And thank you, Razi, behind the scenes. See you guys back here tomorrow, same time. And goodbye.